This is one of several videos that I've made on centering and body mechanics. And my goal here is for you to gain a better understanding of the nature of clay so that you can make it do what you want within the ability of the clay to do what you want. Because there's only so much that you can coax the clay into doing. However, if you understand the nature of clay, you will be able to solve problems, and if things aren't going the way you want them to go, you'll be able to come up with a solution. My name is Daniel Vito, and I own Fireborn Studios, and you can find out more about me, my studio, and my work in the links below. Yep. So, first thing is, you should weigh your clay, so you know what you've got. So all my lumps of clay are 2.5 pounds. And then when you finish wedging, you should have either a cone with a smooth bottom or a nice ball. And this has already been pugged, so it doesn't require a heck of a lot of wedging. But that's what my wedging looks like. And I'm using 2.5 pounds for all these. And consistency is always important. So you have some idea of what you can get out of 2.5 pounds. You make your first bowl or your first whatever. You see how big it is. The next one will probably be a little bigger. The one after that will probably be a little bit bigger out of the same amount of clay. And then you're going to settle into a routine and they'll all be pretty much the same size, and when you open you will have some anticipation of how big the thing is that you're going to be making. Okay, so there's my 2.5 pound lumps all prepped and ready to go. First thing about centering is you want to get the clay in the middle. And it's not going to stick unless you have some water in the wheel. So, get some water down there, as little as possible. Throw it in the middle. Check and see how centered it is by making a circle like that. And if it's not in the center, slide it in to the center. And after it's in the center, make it nice and centered with the bottom edge tucked down. That's pretty good. Next thing is this needs to be lubricated, because if it's not, and I grab onto it, no matter what, it's going to come off. It's going to stick to your hand. So, get it back down there, anchor it down, check for center. Okay, so now you have to lubricate. Now, if I dump this bucket of water on here, it's just going to all fly off and go in the splash pan. I need to keep it lubricated so that it's not sticky, because if it's sticky, it's going to take my hand and it's going to pull my hand over that way as the wheel rotates. And so I have to keep it adequately lubricated. If it's dry and sticky, it's going to pull my hand over that way as the wheel rotates. Like that. So I need to have it lubricated enough that this stays on center. This bone got to be right coming through the center from 7 o'clock to 1 o'clock. How do you lubricate? Well, you can do this, but also you can fill your sponge with water, and then while it's over the pot, you can goose it and keep getting water to come out as you center. So I can, get lots of little squirts out of this, and I'm not done. I still have lots of water. So what I see people do is they put it in there, they wring it out, and they bring it over here, and then there's no water. So instead, bring it over here when it's full of water so that you can continue to get water as you need it. So that as I need water, I just give it a little squeeze. So that's lubrication. Next, you need to lean in. So you need to lean in so that your nose is at or beyond the center of the clay. And when you lean in, your shoulder's going to come forward and your forearm is going to come forward, which is going to give you your power. So that's leaning in. The next thing is you need to be braced and anchored, which means this elbow needs to be in and down on your leg, on your thigh. And to get it down there, you want to tip to the left, drop your left shoulder, and plant that right here. And then, when you lean forward, you're going to pick up all the weight of your upper body driving this arm forward. Next, you want to anchor. You want to anchor this in place. So, you don't want this to go like this or like this. And the back and forth anchor is your elbow right here. That keeps your arm from going back and forth. And the left-right anchor is this hand coming in from over here and holding this so that it doesn't go like that. So right now, this is pretty centered and I'm not really moving very much. But if I push this off center, you can see all of a sudden, let me get it even more off center. Now you can see this hand is moving all over the place. So if I focus on anchoring here and anchoring here, that's what gets us back on center. So that's anchoring. Now, for additional support, I've got my forearm just touching this. So I don't want to press too hard because I don't want to bruise my arm, but having my forearm on this helps to stabilize things. Having this arm resting on my leg bone here helps to stabilize things. And triangulation is important because if you've ever looked at a bridge, they tend to have a structure that looks kind of like this with a bunch of triangles and sometimes even verticals that add more support. But the idea is triangulation stays stiff. A square can go like this, but a triangle is rigid. So here's my triangle from here to here and coming up through my arms like that. So that's the triangle. And my elbows are anchored. This elbow was here, this elbow was here, and I'm touching my legs, and that's my anchor for my triangle for stability. You don't want a skirt to start sneaking out here. You want this part of your hand on the bat. So if you push and you're not down on the bat, the clay is going to start to sneak out there, and sometimes this clay has undulations in it so that every time the wheel rotates, this hand goes up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down because of the undulations in the skirt. And that's not good. So if you start to get a skirt, you need to get rid of it by putting your thumb here and pushing down and pushing in. And I'm getting rid of that, and you can see the bat become visible as I shove that clay in and get rid of the skirt. And if there's any left, I can take one of my tools and get rid of it. But I don't like to waste clay, so I want to get as much of that back into the pot as I can. The whole time I'm centering, I want this to be the widest point and it to get progressively narrower toward the top. A cone is fine, a dome is fine, a mushroom is not good, a doorknob is not good. They're both skinnier at the bottom. And I don't want a volcano either. So when I push with my hand at an angle, this is going to push it down into a lower shape. And when I tilt this hand back and have this plane more vertical, it's going to push this up into a more soup can cylindrical shape. If you get too cylindrical, then it breaks off at the bottom and separates from the wheel, and that's no good. But so long as it's tilted, part of the force that you're applying is driving this down onto the wheel, and it won't come off. If you tilt ultra far so that your primary force is here, then you're going to start making a doorknob or a mushroom. And for sure it's going to come off the wheel or break above the wheel. And when you go to cone, if you slide the outside up, sometimes you get this volcano shape, which is bad because it's always soft and gooey in there, and that leads to S cracks in the bottom of your pot later on. So if you start to get a volcano, you need to roll that over the side, get it off, and then squash it down into a dome again. So to review, you don't want to get a mushroom, you don't want to get a doorknob, you don't want to get a volcano, and you don't want to get a soup can. You want a cone or a dome. So now we're going to talk about the pressure that you apply to this lump of clay. You are definitely pushing from 7 o'clock to 1 o'clock, but what about this hand? Is it just holding your left hand and stabilizing it, or is it doing anything else? Well, you can totally center just like this without this hand touching the clay. But you can also pull back so that these fingers pull this lump of clay back in toward the heel of this hand, which gives you twice the power. So I'm going to do that. The sponge is right here in that hook. I'm not pressing against the sponge. The sponge has got lots of water in it. I'm going to pull or claw back in toward my left palm. And then you can see as I do that, that the clay starts to come up into a cone. Okay. And when I cone, that's how I get the clay up. I either go like this or I go like this, but I press at the bottom and come up, or I squeeze this way and come up. So I'm going to come up into a cone this way. And when I come back down, I bend the top over and bring it down. And this time I'm going to squeeze this way and come up into a cone. And then I'm going to bend the top over. Okay, so up into a cone, and down. Bend the top over, press down. When you bring it down from a cone, if the clay fights you, then you have a problem inside this lump of clay. If it goes down smoothly into a dome, good. If it doesn't, you either have an air bubble or a lump. And you might as well take it off the wheel and re-wedge it and start over. Okay, so you've got it centered, and then you start to throw, and then for some unknown reason, it gets off center. So what do you do when your clay gets off center? Well, you can recenter your clay. So I'm going to show you how. First of all, I'm not very good at getting things off center, but okay, I'm going to poke a hole in this, and then I'm just going to slide the whole thing off center. So now the bottom of this thing is not in the center anymore, and my hole is off center. So how do I get this thing back on center? Okay, what I do is I stabilize here on the side and I push in, and at the same time I put my finger in the hole and I make a U so that this clay has to go between this curve and this curve. So this is it. I make the clay go between those two walls, and I'm pushing down significantly, but I'm not burrowing a hole into the bottom of the pot. But as you can see, I've shoved it back into the center. So now this is perfectly centered. I've re-centered an off-centered lump. Takes a little practice, but it can be done. So now this thing is centered and opened, and I want to make the floor flat because I'm going to make a pitcher, and it's going to have a flat bottom. So how do I get my bottom flat and level? Well, there's lots of ways you can do it. You know, some people stick 2 thumbs in there, some people go like this and pull toward them. I just keep my thumb in there like I had it there in the first place and drag it off in that direction with a sponge for lubrication. So I'm sticking the sponge in the hole and I'm sliding my thumb off to the left. So how do I know how far down to go? How do I know I'm not gonna like hit the bat, or it's not gonna be 3/4 of an inch thick? Well, the way I can tell is these fingers right here are sliding along on the bat, and I can sense the difference in elevation between them and my thumb. I know where my thumb is height-wise because of my reference here to the bat. This takes some practice, but you can get really good at this and get the bottom just the right thickness every time. If you have doubts, you can always stop the wheel and poke with a needle or whatever you need to do. When you go like this, which is probably the next most common technique, to put your fingers in there and pull toward you. I see a lot of people, when they do that, they go like this and their fingers sweep down, and so the bottom of their pot the farther out they go, the thinner the bottom of the pot gets because their fingers come down. Now, if you just drag out without dropping your fingers, that works. But if you drop your fingers as you come out, that doesn't work. So if you're going to do that, this is your reference, your thumb on the bat. And when you pull toward you, your thumb referencing on the bat is your guide for your elevation. I do this, you can do that. Doesn't matter. Just as long as you have a reference for elevation. And if you're going to make something that's wide, you can also look at the bottom and make sure that when you're looking down on the bottom, you don't see undulations like on a plate. So I'm going to push down here. I'm going to squeeze this out and make it flare, and then I'm going to drag out. So I'm pushing down and it's getting lower. You want to get it from the side too. So this just got lower. I'm going to continue to push down as I slide out, and as I drag this out, I'm going to make sure that this continues to get wider, because what I don't want to do is make a bowl and then lay the side of the bowl down, because that's guaranteed failure. So I need to make this get fatter here. So I'm going to push down and drag out. And you can see that down here, there is no overhang. And as I look here at the bottom, it's flat except for this little bump in the middle. And I can go over it like this, referencing the bat with my fingers and make my thumb slide around there and make it perfectly flat. And I'm going to come out some more. Okay, and then again, I reference the bat over here. I slide my thumb in and out. I can see undulations and I can feel undulations. And I make sure that I push the mountains into the valleys until I have a flat plate. And then to finish it off, I just take this, lean it out, and stick my finger under it, and like so, and I'm done. So now I've got a plate with flat bottom and an overhanging lip, and I didn't get an overhang until this very end part here. And if I want more of an overhang, I can, depending on what I've got here, I can make it a little wider. And the alternative way of doing this is just to take this whole thing and instead of standing up the lip like I did, and I'm going to shove this back in and totally flatten this piece of clay. And now I simply have a pancake of clay the full size of the bat, or darn near the full size of the bat. And if you do that, then you can take your rib, and if necessary, you can cut this so that it's perfectly round. And then you can stand up the edge by sneaking under it and lifting it. And then you can get to a plate that way. This is kind of back where I was a minute ago. Okay, so to review what we just talked about, you want to use enough water, not too much, but you want enough water, and you want to hold your sponge in a way that you can get water whenever you need it by giving your sponge a little squeeze. So empty your sponge, put it in the water, fill it up with water, and keep it full when you bring it over to the pot. And while you're working on the pot, keep it tucked here. Don't press it against the clay and squeeze all the water out of it immediately. Instead, keep it tucked. So it will be in my right hand like that. And I'd be working on the clay with my fingertips, or maybe the bottom of my hand, but I wouldn't squeeze the water out of my sponge. Anchor and brace and lean in. Triangulate so that this is stable and doesn't go back and forth or left and right. Triangulate. Start at the bottom of your piece of clay and come up. Center the bottom, then progressively move up, up, up. After you open it and when you come up, recenter if you need to and compress the lip to make it run smoothly. Work quickly, because if you're going to use plenty of water, you also need to work quickly, otherwise your clay is going to get soggy, especially when you're working on a tall cylindrical piece. Now when you're centering, not that much clay or not that much water can be absorbed by the clay, but when you start throwing, you have water on the inside, water on the outside, the walls are thin, it can get soggy pretty quickly. So the faster you can work, the stronger your clay is going to be, and the more you can do with it.
What I'm trying to do in this video is to help you get an understanding, a better understanding of body mechanics and the nature of clay, so that regardless of whether you do precisely what I showed you, you can achieve success. And if things don't work the way you'd like them to, you can figure out why. You'll understand what's going on, and you can solve your problems. Sometimes people come to my gallery and they say, "Where do you bake your pots?" Well, I bake lots of sourdough bread. I've been doing it for years, but this is where I bake my pots. I fire my kiln to cone 11. If you like this video, I'd appreciate it if you would click the little like thing below, subscribe, and ring the bell, and check out my websites down below and consider purchasing some of my work. Have a great day, enjoy making pots, and enjoy using them. This is Dan Vito at Fireborn Studios, and I'll see you in the next video.